A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces. In their present form, these bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development.
Threads provides a feeling of paranoia throughout the first half of the film, which is reminiscent to that which most people felt at the time of its creation.
I had been, worried since I was a student at Southampton in the 1960s. I thought that the Cuban Missile Crisis was going to lead to the end of civilization. But, even worse than that was when you get into the 80s. The Cold War, it's probably the worst since the 1960s. Just listing the things that kind of provoked anxiety. There was this terrible arms race between the Soviets and the West. The Russians had shot down a Korean airliner that invaded Afghanistan. Reagan was being very warlike and calling the Soviet Union an evil empire. And then there was his Star Wars program, the Strategic Defense Initiative, that promised that they could get around any Soviet attack by just putting up this iron shield over the US. So anybody who thought about it was worried about it. The thing that occurred to me is that everybody thought about it, but nobody knew anything about it.
It's peaceful up here, isn't it? Oh, I'd love to live out in the country, wouldn't you, Jimmy?
What the heck?
Why not?
It's dead. Not to do. Just imagine living down there.
At first, the film distracts the viewer with a relatable and basic love story between two characters, Ruth Beckett and Jimmy Kemp, who are facing a pivotal moment in their lives and relationship, as Ruth is having a child. While this plot is developing, the build-up to Armageddon steadily plays in the background.
Aboard two giant Antonov transport planes late yesterday afternoon and were immediately moved undercover into temporary hangars.
See that? Watching that thing about Far East and it goes and turns its over.
Far East? Wow, what's going on there?
Iran. The Americans have just said Russian.
Iran? That's not the Far East, you pilot. That's the Middle East. China, Hong Kong, that's the Far East.
So what? It's far enough, isn't it?
It's at Near East myself. Scarborough and Skegness.
Skeggy? I'd rather watch me toenails grow than go there.
Anyway, never mind that rubbish. What about these two birds to east of this table?
Characters are constantly glued to television sets and radios, which cover the escalating situation. This instills a feeling of dread in the viewer, as the news cycle presented in the film is made to feel eerily realistic. There is also an implied irony that even though everyone is constantly watching the news and seemingly tuned into the situation, nobody is actually prepared for the nuclear exchange when it takes place, not even those who are supposed to be.
Something here. Yes, I understand. Do I have to go right away? No? When? Yes, I see.
Jackson's main goal with the second half of the film, after the bombs are dropped, was to capture the emotion and mental state of those who survived. He had already created a documentary in 1982 for the BBC titled A Guide to Armageddon, which examined the scientific facts behind what would occur if a nuclear explosion went off in a populated area. He was, however, not fully satisfied with his work, and understood that he had to attempt to capture the emotions that would result from such an earth-shattering event, as this was more important than showing the physical damage that it would cause. This was dangerous territory, as a prior film from 1966 titled The War Game also sought to capture the human perspective of such a tragedy, but was not allowed on national television by the BBC, as many executives thought that it would lead to mass suicides. He was, however, allowed to make his film, partly due to his prior work, which saw success, and due to the fact that he had done extensive research into the topic. He also wished to strip the film of any political influences. The movie would not be targeted at one side of the aisle or another, but would rather be a sort of public service announcement about a very real threat.
All the research that I'd done for that small half-hour documentary, I realized that what I showed, sides of beef melting in the shop window of a butcher and flying glass shredding a pumpkin, that was about the physical effects, but what I couldn't cover in a documentary was the psychological effects. And I knew from research by people like Robert J. Lifton, who had studied the effects of the explosions in Nagasaki and Hiroshima afterwards and the effect on the survivors, that the psychological effects and the societal effects were much, much greater than any physical damage. And you couldn't really show that in a documentary, but you could show that with a drama. So I prepared for that with the BBC's agreement. They didn't suggest this. I suggested a Guide to Armageddon, and I said to them, look, we got away with that. There wasn't, a great drama and crisis and any of that. What I'd like to do is to go further into the subject, to deeply research, do a dramatized documentary. And they said, well, go with our limited blessing. go do your research, and then come back and we'll talk about it.
Threads is not only relevant to the 80s when it was created, but its relevance still remains today. With rising tensions in the world now, where each day feels like an escalation, the threat of nuclear war is yet again a very real one. Thus we must again revisit Threads and movies like it, which give us a glimpse into our potentially imminent future.